Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation as part of the Industry Insight webinar series. The topic this time is What Virtual Law Firms Know That We Don't, sponsored by Citrix ShareFile. Speaking today will be Chad Burton and Nicole Braddock. The Industry Insight webinar series is hosted by the ABA Legal Technology Resource Center. To stay updated on upcoming webinars or view previous videos, visit ambar.org/industryinsight. You can also stay updated on legal technology news through our blog, lawtechnologytoday.org. Chad Burton is the CEO and founder of Kira Legal, working with lawyers and bar associations to modernize the practice of law through building technology, consulting, operations support, and contingent staffing. He also is the principal of Burton Law, a virtual law firm representing primarily tech companies. Chad is also active in the Volunteer Bar Association world, serving on ABA Law Practice Division's Council and as chair of the division's Futures Initiative. He regularly speaks around the country on topics related to legal technology, virtual law practice, and the future of the legal profession. He was in the 2014 Fast Case 50 class of Global Legal Innovators. Nicole Braddock is the Chief Strategy Officer at Kira Legal, a company that works with lawyers to launch and grow next-generation firms through its consulting services, operations support, and flexible staffing solutions. She was the founder and CEO of Custom Counsel, a nationwide network of freelance attorneys which was acquired by Kira Legal in 2015. Nicole has been recognized as a 2012 ABA Journal Legal Rebel and was named to the Fast Case 50 list of Global Legal Innovators in 2014. Thank you all for joining us today, and we'll now begin the webinar.
Great, thank you, Rose. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today to talk about the concept of virtual law firms. As Rose said, my name is Chad Burton, and with me today is my partner, Nicole Braddock, as you will see during, as usually people find during presentations like this, or just talking to us in general. By the end of this, you'll probably like her a lot more than me. That's just, I think, just science at this point. So we're going to try to have a conversation without fighting with each other too much over the next half an hour, talking about virtual law firms, and look forward to your questions at the end. So let's jump in because we don't have a ton of time here. What is a virtual law firm? If we were together, not in this webinar concept where we can't see your faces, it would be nice to know kind of who all has something that is a virtual law firm. Since we've been talking about this for the past 5-6 years, when it's become more mainstream is probably the wrong term, more known within the industry with lawyers, the concept of what it means to be a virtual law firm has evolved. I mean, and there's a range, and really we're talking, as we're going to go through the features today, you'll see it really can be what you want it to be. But from a range standpoint, you've got solos who are delivering services just online to clients, and then at the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got multi-lawyer, multi-jurisdiction firms doing full-service representation. As we'll talk about today, there are some core features that exist within most firms. But before we do that, the title of this webinar has been, what do virtual firms know that we don't? And we will operate under the premise that virtual law firms can think for themselves. We were thinking it was kind of like a Citizens United thing, that they're people, maybe, but maybe that's outside the scope of our half-hour discussion. But before we jump in, so Nicole, what is it that these virtual law firms / people know that we don't?
I think the answer is nothing. I think what virtual law firms are doing is putting together...
Are we done then?
We're done.
We're done. Thanks everybody for joining us. This has been great. I didn't spend money. That's good.
Excellent. No, so I think probably everybody on this webinar understands that the business of running a law firm has gotten more complicated over the past decade, and even more. It's become more difficult to make a profit. It's become more difficult to grow. So I think that probably everybody who's on this call understands that the legal marketplace is shifting, and that that something needs to happen to help firms succeed in the coming decades. I think that virtual law firms also know that that one good way to increase profitability and to help weather any storm and to grow in again, next few decades is something that everyone here knows, which is controlling your bottom line and reducing overhead is a really helpful component in making sure you have good profit margins and that you have some flexibility financially as you grow and expand. So I think that we all know these things. Virtual law firms are just kind of putting the pieces together and creating a new offering for our clients.
Yeah, the hint we have on the slide, not a fake firm. When I remember when we first started talking about this concept, it felt like it was when you say virtual law firm, and I remember it. I live in Dayton, Ohio, and it's this pretty small legal community, and as people kind of understood what we were doing from our firm model, and I came from a big firm world, so very different idea of just flexible work environment and how it did things, and it was, I think, kind of hard for them to get their head around the fact that it was still serving real clients, real law practice, and I would just tell them that I was sitting in my parents' basement eating Cheetos, hoping that clients show up online. And
it's a really unfortunate name for this category of firms that we'll talk about the features, but I think virtual law firm it's poor branding, I think.
Oh yeah, and when I was when I was converting Burton Law into a virtual model, when I was working with a marketing agency on it, we probably talked way too much about whether to even use the label, and I think one of the things, and I think we're getting there. I didn't like the label, so we didn't really put it as part of our marketing for the firm, but I think it is instructive for purposes of these kinds of discussions, and the label is still here, but pretty soon we're going to be talking about, it's just about practicing law, and that's really the core of it. And as we kind of jump in here to the different features of it, that's what it is. We're talking about just practicing law in a different way. You want to talk about the duh slide here?
So this is the slide that makes us go duh. So this goes back to the point that virtual does not just, it doesn't mean there's like a robot practicing law. Virtual at its core is no fixed office space. So it can be that somebody's working in their basement eating Cheetos, or it can be that it's a large distributed firm where 50 lawyers around the country are all working from their home office space. Or a lot of these firms also have sort of a flex office space where they can meet when they need to, meet with clients when they need to, and that sort of thing. But it's the general concept is that you don't have a fixed office space, so obviously you lose that big fixed overhead cost.
Yep. And there's a lot of options out there, like the Regis's, the Da Vinci's, co-working spaces, all kinds of things. Talked about common features earlier. No fixed office space, as Nicole had just mentioned. Really what we're talking about here that underlies this from a practical way is it's about mobility. Regardless of your practice, if you have a very old school office type practice, everybody's trying to figure out how to be more mobile. And I think the virtual model just takes it to as far as it can, because everything you're doing is on the move, which regardless if you're in a solo or in a large firm, everybody's trying to figure out whether it's accessing information while you're on vacation or pretending like you're engaged at your kid's soccer game. Everybody's trying to figure out how to work on the move, but that's an underlying component to this. And then we'll talk about the technology a little bit later, but the cloud obviously plays a big role in being able to be mobile and remote.
Ignoring your children's soccer game is a feature that mostly appeals to you,
well, yeah.
not the general public.
But fortunately, my kids are, they have my athletic skills and are incapable of playing soccer well, so I don't have to worry about that.
Nice. Yeah, we'll talk more about cloud-based technology in a bit, which really tends to be the backbone of virtual law firm and allows for this type of practice. So I think we talked a little bit about benefits or touched on them a little, and there's a lot to talk about here, but we have short time, so we'll be quick on this. But when your overhead is low and you're operating a firm with optimal efficiency, it allows for a number of things to happen. And I think the key term is flexible. It makes your firm flexible. It allows you to enter new markets more easily. It allows you to scale up and scale down more easily. It allows you pricing flexibility for clients. And so a little bit about like what that actually means. So you're operating a very lean firm in that you don't have the fixed overhead space. Typically, and we'll talk about staffing in a bit, but typically you're not paying for a receptionist to sit there. You're not, oftentimes your technology is less expensive and that sort of thing. So when your bottom line is controlled, you have a healthier margin, assuming you're keeping your rates as they are. That allows you to a little bit more flexibility. For example, if you want to enter a new market where the rates you currently have are not tolerated, the market can't tolerate. Say you bill $300 typically an hour, but you want to start serving a client base where really $200 an hour is the maximum they can tolerate. Well, you've got a healthy margin built in, so you can reduce your hourly rate, open up an entire new market for your firm, and grow your business that way. Pricing flexibility is really critical too, and it kind of ties in with having a healthier margin. So when you're talking about alternative fee arrangements with clients, you're much more able to, for starters, reduce your cost, but then also you can take a bit more risk. And in alternative fee arrangements, they don't have to be risky arrangements, but sometimes while you're working out how best to structure these over time, and you need to gather data on your outputs and that sort of thing, having the ability to sort of take the risk on your side as opposed to the client side can also really help expand your business. And if you're a firm that serves general counsel who are really starting to push on firms for alternative fee arrangements, it becomes a lot easier when you're a virtual firm because you can answer the question, we can do whatever you need us to do. We can arrange this in any way that needs to happen because you have that ability. And then scalability is a feature that ties in a bit with technology, and Chad will talk about the technology, but when you're not limited by physical space, it's very easy to scale up and scale down. So as you hire, if it's all distributed, everybody's in their own space, we'll talk about collaboration tools as a way to sort of bring a distributed team together, but you can also scale down very easily. So if you are building your bench of contract lawyers, for example, to plug in, and you need them for a big matter, but you want to scale down, physical space is not a consideration, and so all of these things just allow you to operate much more lean and respond to the market, and eventually be a more profitable organization.
And kind of adding a bit to that, so so let's kind of take the flip side of this is awesome and nice, but let's, having now done this for several years and constantly evolving the law firm model, and we're going into a new shift now. Nicole mentioned the contract lawyers in different ways, so we've scaled down from people, but we're going to be scaling up in different ways. Just because you can scale doesn't mean it's the right answer. There is still a lot of effort that goes into it, despite the lean and the flexible nature of it. And a lot of this has to do with culture and engagement, and that takes effort. And like any organization, you're going to have some folks that are more engaged than others, and you just really got to look at what type of client you're serving. Your pay model has to do with this, and how you pay your attorneys. Are you, deciding whether you're going to be a more entrepreneurial type firm and eat what you kill? Are you paying salaries? I mean, those kind of things play into while you are able to scale up and scale down and you have all these options, it doesn't mean that it's always the greatest idea. And not, and a lot of people think, hey, I want a more flexible, lifestyle, work environment, etc. That doesn't mean they're best, they're going to thrive in that kind of environment. Some people need structure whether they know it or not. So as you're thinking about maybe adding people to a firm, and this, you got to really start thinking through profiles of lawyers and how you're going to do effective recruiting and make sure you keep people engaged.
Yeah, I don't often like to compliment Chad, but it's a good point. We've seen a lot of people come in and out of the virtual firm, but if you look at the population at large and people who are working from home and remote employment, we do, for example, at Curo, we're all distributed, and we do a lot in the name of culture, and I think we do a very good job. But there's at least a slight isolating factor that happens. Less so when you're on the phone all day because your business partner doesn't stop talking. But
or it's good that you're remote because your business partner is intolerable. So sometimes.
Nice. Yeah, I think that it's a fair point that it doesn't suit everyone, that model. You do have to be careful about who you bring on and make sure that they can handle that, especially if they're coming out of big law, maybe where they had 10 secretaries and assistants and all sorts of flashy things. I've seen a lot of people make the transition from big law to virtual and do it beautifully and be very happy for the freedom and the lack of political stuff, but you need to watch out for that. So the type of firm, I think we've already really hit this. We've seen firms from solo practitioners all the way to, 50, 70, 100 lawyer firms operating in a distributed model. It seems to really suit firms of any size and as well across practice area. I think that the only thing to think about is if there's something unique about your practice area that requires your clients to want to come in and regularly talk to you face-to-face, then you got to think a little bit more about, is this the model that's going to best serve your clients? Is this going to be appealing to the type of clients you want to serve? The answer might be no. For example, the one I always throw out there, I don't know why, is estate planning. And if you have a estate planning practice where your clients are really used to constantly coming in and talking to you and sitting down with you, then you're going to want to think about it. But at the same time, in estate planning, you may have clients that just want you to go to their house and work on this stuff. So it's got to start with the clients, these decisions, and then but we've seen it transactional firms, firms that just support general counsel, corporate legal departments. We've seen litigation firms. Anything really has worked well in this area.
Yeah, I mean, over the past several years, we've tried different models, and we've evolved it where at times we had a dedicated, earmuffs if you're on this webinar and you're from Regis. We used Regis for a while and it was horrible, but we had a dedicated office there, and it was ours 24/7. But nobody used it because it was remote, and we work with mostly business clients and have throughout, and most of the time they don't want to see you because they're busy doing their thing, or they're in different states, or like Nicole said, they like you to go see them. That's not a bad thing. The other kind of twist I'll throw on that is that there's the default. So Nicole threw out estate planning, which may or may not be a good example.
It may not. It may not.
But, whatever. Or the other one is, it's very easy. It's like if you have a consumer-driven practice, maybe it's a personal injury. The default thinking on that is, well, people want to come sit down and be able to walk in whenever they want. That might be the case, but maybe that's just not your model. So it might be a behavior change for firms typically, but and for clients and firms, but that's something you can always look at. So while that may be the default feeling, it doesn't mean it's always the right answer. So there's a lot of room for creativity and thinking about it differently.
You want
Oh,
to take
technology.
this?
Yep.
Yeah,
Let's jump into
technology.
technology. Probably go to the next slide. Yeah, there we go. So this slide here with this cloud is Nicole's least favorite slide of anything I've ever used. For some reason, she hates it with a passion. But
For the record, it normally has no text. It's just a slide with a cloud.
That's right. She did put the text on it. So we talked about the cloud a little bit, and if you are going to effectively jump into some form of a distributed / remote / virtual concept, or you're just operating a firm in general, the cloud is going to come into play. And if you are a person that is, not so fast.
Sorry.
If you're a person that's still trying to figure out, get your head around this cloud idea, the LTRC, which you're obviously is why you're here and through the sponsorship or through hosting this. If you Google LTRC cloud opinions, the LTRC has put together a great web page that shows all the opinions of all the states that have given the thumbs up, and they all have. So go ahead and take a look at that if you're trying to get your head around it. But cloud-based software is going to be key because it allows you to go without a server, it allows you to be mobile. It's easy to use. It fits on your mobile device or works with your mobile device as well. For example, this. So when you're talking about mobility, and it annoys Nicole for some reason, but I probably operate off of mobile devices 90% of the time. And I can do everything I need to do, whether it's on the Curo side or practicing law, through my iPhone and my iPad, and now to nerd it up on another level, the Apple Watch, because I would not survive apparently without it. At least that's what the marketing materials told me, so I had to buy one. And so you're able to, like looking at documents, so we use Box in our law firm, and we use Google Drive and Curo, and you can access documents for everywhere you need, wherever you are on whatever device you have, and that's a key component from a mobility standpoint.
And just to be clear, Chad is a pretty big nerd, but you don't have to be a big nerd. Cloud-based software is very intuitive. It's very easy to use for the most part. A lot of the modern SaaS platforms are very easy to use, and you don't need to work from your iPad. But the ability to grab your laptop and take it anywhere is extremely useful in the modern practice of law.
The really good platforms, the learning curve is quite low. We put this together kind of if you want to look at core or essential technologies. There's, I think, really 4 you look at, and on the practice management front, again, there's a ton of great cloud-based tools that are out there. The Clios, Rocket Matters, My Cases, those are all that are good for purposes of being able to do your time billing, calendar contacts, etc. on the move. Document management is obviously lifeblood of lawyering for us. There's an overlap here on the practice management side, whether for Clio, for example, has really stepped up its game on document management over the past year or so. But I said we use Box, and we use it. Lots of lawyers. I think there's some stat, and I'm kind of making this up, but I think the stat I saw is that 60% of lawyers say they're using Dropbox in some fashion. So you've got the Dropboxes, the Boxes, the Google Drives, lots of options out there to be able to store and access documents very easily on the cloud. Cloud-based email, this is one that kind of 2 main players that have emerged. Google Apps for Work, which we use and love the Google platform, the Google, the Facebook, the Google, the interwebs. Google is there, and Google Apps for Work, which is different than free Gmail, different terms of service, different security levels, etc. Also, and I'm a Mac person, and this pains me to say this, but Microsoft Office 365 has really emerged and really gotten better, especially over the past year. And I think that's probably primarily with Steve Ballmer going off and buying the Clippers and retiring from Microsoft. So now there's a different view and kind of focus on cloud and mobile. And so 365 has gotten really good, and they're looking at integrations. You know, so that's a big, so those are kind of the two main cloud features there. And then collaboration tools, there's a ton of those. Nicole, do you want to talk about those a bit?
Sure, yeah. I think that you need to really think about collaboration tools when you're building a distributed team of any size. So even if it's just you and a paralegal, but you're not in the same room, or you and an associate or a partner and you're not sitting in the same room, collaboration tools become very important. And for example, in Curo, we use a platform called Slack, and I don't think we could run our company as effectively as we do without Slack, and have such a strong culture. So Slack is basically like a essentially a private Facebook, although that's not really a great comparison. So it's just for Curo, for the Curo team, and there are different channels where different kinds of discussions happen. There are private groups where you can talk about things only relevant to some members of the team, but it becomes like sort of the water cooler. So there's a lot of stuff that's like entirely irrelevant and likely HR violations that go through the, not really, just kidding, that go through the Slack channel.
I thought I'd remain silent just to make it awkward for you, your little joke there. So.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I'm here for you.
But then also, by having this platform where we can have a client-specific channel where all we do is talk about the client, it helps everybody. If there's a large team working on it, everybody knows everything that's happening with that client. We can talk about issues, and it cuts down on email considerably, which increases productivity. Although I would say with the water cooler stuff, the productivity is probably a wash, but it's worth it for the culture. And then we use project management tools like Trello. If you are a project management nerd, Trello is a dream, and it basically is a way for you to track say you have a piece of litigation, and you break it down into component parts, and you delineate who's responsible for each of the parts, and then you can kind of see, if you set it up this way, you can see who's doing what, when that piece is done, and it really helps you sort of manage a large piece of litigation, for example, or a large transaction when there are a bunch of people working on it. And then chat platforms, for sure. We have weekly video calls with our team, and it's a great way just to get everybody catching up, to see each other. We use Google Hangouts. It's no good. We use it because we use Google for work, and Google makes it very easy to use Hangouts, but it's not the best platform. There are some other good ones like Skype or Citrix here. GoToWebinar if you're doing a webinar. Okay. So you definitely want to think about collaboration tools.